Welcome back to the Builder's Bench. I'm Craig Larkins. Hot off the presses, the fall BCCA Stat Pack is out, and it's telling quite a story. More people are working in the trades, and there's real movement on getting more women into the industry. So back on the bench to break down the numbers is BCCA President Chris Atchison. Welcome to the bench, Chris.
Thanks for having me, Craig.
Do we still say hot off the presses? Is that a thing these days?
It all sounds good to me. Yeah.
I do have to say, it is my favorite time of the year in the fall and the spring when the Stat Pack is released. It's a great snapshot of the industry. I have the latest ones in my hands. So let's dive right into it, Chris. The big picture, construction now makes up 9.2% of BC's GDP. So in your opinion, what's driving that growth that we're seeing in the province?
It's just been such a consistent good news story that construction continues to be one of the largest and most vital industries in British Columbia. And we're observing sort of this sustained investment across the province from major infrastructure and multi-unit housing projects that keep this activity strong. So even with the pressures that we're seeing from rising material costs or trade uncertainty, the sector has remained resilient. Demand for housing and population growth are going to continue to fuel this, and construction has stepped up to meet the moment and to meet those needs.
That's so great to hear. A big jump that I noticed on the Stat Pack was the labor force in the fall of 2025. It was around 251. We're at 267,000 now, or rather the spring of 2025. That's a 10% increase. So what, in your opinion, is behind that jump?
Yeah, we've always been saying, like, we've been hovering around that 250,000 mark during these Stat Packs. And in recent years, we've seen it just on the south side of that 250,000 mark. So to see this jump, again, it was a little bit surprising to us as well. But I think it speaks to the amount of work that's underway. We've been experiencing labor shortages for the past number of years. And even though the number of job vacancies have declined a little bit, there still seems to be an appetite for new people to come in to the industry. There is that demand from the employer sector to hire new people. And so I think what we're seeing is both that kind of that perfect storm of people wanting into the industry. There's still being a demand for those folks and fewer people leaving in this. So I think that's why we're seeing this swell. But we're also seeing better efforts around training and recruitment and retention across the sector. Finding good people, holding on to good people, changing the culture of the construction industry. And with British Columbia remaining BC's top employer in the goods producing sector, it continues to attract people to good paying jobs, stable jobs, well paid careers, recession proof, pandemic proof. And it's early to tell what type of influence something like prompt payment legislation would have, but this type of commitment to the industry is demonstrating that we're being seen, we're being heard, and this is a good place to kind of park your future.
So I want to piggyback on that. Do you think, construction's been getting quite a lot of attention since the federal election last spring? Do you think that has any influence on people wanting to get back into the industry? I mean, there's a lot of attention. We're talking in the next federal budget, there's going to be quite the focus on construction. Do you think that impacts it?
Absolutely. I think that there's been a lot of talk about housing shortages. There's been a lot of talk about affordability. There's been a lot of talk about our infrastructure deficit. And so people who are a little bit uncertain or are not sure at all on what they are going to choose for their future can look at the provincial and federal indicators that are coming out that there is going to be investment, long-term infrastructure investment. There is going to be a commitment to apprentices. So all of these things are kind of aligning for people who may have been a bit uncertain about where's a good place to direct their future of work. Our industry is still an employer of choice. Our industry is the future.
And a big number, we're talking about trades. The jobs are up 14%. We're seeing more women on the tools than ever. What do you think is moving the needle on that?
Well, I mentioned it before that there's been a concentrated effort over the number of years to raise that awareness, raise the bar about workplaces in construction. Not only is there an emphasis on the physical safety, but this emphasis within construction to look after itself on the psychological safety, the health and welfare of all workers being the most important asset that comes to work every day. And the construction industry has really leaned in to help embrace this culture shift. And so it's physical, psychological safety, but we've also seen mentoring. We've seen a re-emphasis on mentoring, on proper fitting PPE, and there's more champions for diversity and inclusiveness across the sector. You're seeing it everywhere, and it's really something that we should be proud of. Again, we've got a long ways to go until we reach that tipping point, but we can't not ignore that the industry is doing something to address the workforce imbalances that we've seen in the numbers for more than a decade.
And we should quickly mention BCCA has a great program, which obviously VRCA members have access to the Building Builders program. We're speaking of mentorship, you can access that on your website. Switching gears, permits. Also should mention another great program that was just launched for CA. We'll be doing a future episode on that, Chris, but you can give it a quick plug here as well. Do you think the signals are more building ahead, or is this kind of a short-term pump when we're seeing that 10% increase in permits?
Yeah, I think we're going to see some ebbs and flows over the foreseeable future. Some data that just came in from the Canadian Construction Association are indicating that maybe our Q3 numbers are a little bit soft, but I do think that permits are such an incredible indicator of where our members and where our industry partners need to be looking. We need to get municipalities, we need to get everyone who's responsible for putting these permits forward for the construction industry in whatever stage they are. We need to have transparency and visibility on that. So even though we're showing 10% year over year increase in multi-unit residential permits, we're a little bit concerned about there might be a short-term dip in some multi-unit residential permits in Q3. So the aggregate trend has been positive. More immediate data suggests that we should be watching this closely through the rest of this year and into Q1 of 2026. And so the tools, like you've mentioned, that we'll do this on another episode to talk about Permit CA, but these will be very important for tracking how this plays out over the next few quarters.
Actually, I was on the site last week looking at some of the reports. It's such a handy tool for the industry. It's a great tool. And heading into a municipal election year next year, that's quite the topic that we're going to be diving into as well when it comes to campaigns and the candidates that are looking to get a seat in the office. So yeah, outside of the world of construction, Chris, for the average British Columbian, why do these numbers matter? How does this show up in their everyday life?
That's a great question, Craig. And I think that construction, when we sit back, we often don't think about it. But those of us who kind of live and breathe it every day, we come to realize that construction touches almost every part of life in British Columbia. The roads we drive on, the schools and hospitals that we rely on, the homes that we need and that we hear about all the time, they all depend on a strong construction sector. And when construction is stable, communities grow, housing gets built, and the economy stays resilient. So these numbers aren't abstract. They translate into jobs, they translate into infrastructure and the ability to meet the needs of a growing population. But I think to look at it even a little bit more thematically in terms of what this means, British Columbia's geopolitical value has increased so much as Canada seeks new trading partners, given this recent instability with our partner to the south. So we're looking for other partners, and we are the gateway to the Asia Pacific. And major infrastructure projects in BC's construction industry are viewed as a strong bulwark for national and international investment in our province. The reality is that as we continue to host global events and become an epicenter unto ourselves as British Columbia can be, things like the upcoming FIFA World Cup in British Columbia. Previously, we had the 2010 Olympics.
Yeah.
BC will be a more attractive market for commercial investment. So we always need to be forward looking, but we need to understand what's got us to this point, and that's a robust and resilient construction sector. And that's going to increase demand, increase investment, increase need, and increase the importance of the industry that we serve.
Mm-hmm. And another factor, I actually have the BCCA press release regarding the Stat Pack in front of us. When we're talking costs, material costs increasing by 4%, there's a ripple effect to that as well to the general public.
Absolutely. I mean, the construction material costs in BC are increasing faster than the overall rate of inflation. And things that we'll see, with maybe an announcement tomorrow by the Bank of Canada, maybe interest rates will drop. But even with inflation cooling in other sectors across the country, construction materials themselves remain elevated. And it's something we need to continue to watch. Since last year, we've been very active on this file, and we've been encouraging of our builders and our community and our sector to start sourcing materials from other places. But the reality is that the vast amount of materials are still coming from south of the border. And until that changes, the cost for production materials has universally increased, and accessing them from other markets will have further increases that we have to be aware of. So, our supply chain uncertainty is contributing to this multiplier effect in the increase, the noticeable increase in construction materials. So these trends emphasize the importance of keeping a close eye on the cost pressures and providing timely data and support to the industry, which is exactly what we're doing with the Stat Pack.
There are so many moving parts to the way we build even the upcoming federal budget. Everyone's kind of patiently waiting to see what's going to drop, but we'll actually be talking about that in a future episode as well. If you had the biggest takeaway from the Stat Pack, the fall 2025, what would that be?
Well, we've been doing it for 12 or 13 years, right? And I think for me, it just every time that we're the largest, one of the largest employers, we're growing in confidence. We're continuing to be diversified. I think the importance of our industry for the provincial economy is, it's undisputable. I think the release of this Stat Pack with the recent announcement of prompt payment legislation and adjudication, and that making it through second reading, just focuses on this is a good time to be in the industry. It's a great time to be representing the industry, but there is so much going on that our industry is a force to be heard, a force to be reckoned with, and a partner in many things that plague British Columbia in a way that we need to look forward to building the future. And I think our Stat Pack paints that consistent picture for the economy of British Columbia and our way to build better going forward with the workforce we have.
And a good way to be involved in that conversation, do you want to touch on the construction survey?
Yeah, so BCCA has just launched our annual BC Construction Industry Survey, and I would just encourage all of those that are involved in the sector, whether you are a new entrant or somebody who's relatively new to the industry, who's somebody who is a business owner or somebody who's a project manager or estimator, seek out that survey. I know Craig will give you the details on that. But we're amplifying this through our networks, and so the Vancouver Regional Construction Association is a distributing partner in that as well, and we get such great data from that survey that we will release. The release of that will coincide with our next Stat Pack release in the spring of 2026. So appreciate your contributions to that.
Yes.
It's an important time of year on a multitude of fronts for the industry.
And you can actually download your own version of the Stat Pack. Really cool components too. Each the regions has their own version that you have graciously created, Chris, as well. You can download it on the BCCA website. Of course, the VRCA version you can download on our website. Chris, thanks so much for joining us today.
It's always a pleasure. I look forward to being back soon.
Chris Atchison is the president of the BC Construction Association. You can find past episodes of The Builder's Bench on VRCA's website and YouTube. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And coming up, I was mentioning, Chris, on The Builder's Bench, the big federal budget drops on November 4th. We'll be breaking that down on November 5th for you. I'm Craig Larkins, and this is The Builder's Bench.